We know you was like a very popular person in your Hollywood days. Well, you all the way through.
Are you saying past tense?
No, I cleaned that up.
Writing,
I said all the days. No.
Acting,
all the days, I said.
Okay.
So what was it like? I know you had your pick. So who was somebody you had a crush on back in the day? Because we all know the other stuff, but we want to know who you had a crush on.
This isn't ageism. I don't know what is. I might still have a pick. Okay, let's just be clear. Okay, I'm ginger today. I can be gray tomorrow, but just let's be clear. I've had, everyone has a love of their life. Are you asking about on stage or off stage?
Both. Past and present.
Well, I'm very conservative in my dating. I'm very monogamous. So, the love of my life was Winter Marsalis. Yeah.
That's a smooth relative.
And our incredible son is about to turn 30. I have a daughter as well, Maya, who's incredible. But yeah, in terms of leading men and working with leading men, and I have young actress and actor mentees, but predominantly young ladies and teens as well. I tell them, look, the seduction of being in the atmosphere of film and television, and it's all fantasy, it's all illusion. And so you have to be very disciplined and clear about that. You can get caught up in the hype of your leading actor or actress expressing feelings for you. And sometimes there's crossover. Sometimes people do find their true love on the set in a movie. But more often than not, it's best to keep the boundaries. The leading men that I have had the privilege, and I believe in that discipline, I tell the actresses, just go by that rule and you will find that you will work for a long time.
What's the rule?
The rule is don't sleep with your leading actor or actress.
We in the barbershop, you gotta be clear.
That's right. So that's it. Just like any place of business, film and television is corporate. Corporations own the film and television entities, the platforms. So keep it corporate. Not that corporations don't, dwell in the space of, we just saw the kiss cam situation. But I'm saying having that discipline. So, working with Samuel L. Jackson was incredible twice. Playing his wife in Home of the Brave, and then of course Eve's Bayou, working with, of course, Dick Van Dyke for 8 years, turning 100 in December. Eddie Murphy, Will Smith, Mario Van Peebles. I can just go down the list of, and most recently I had the opportunity to work with Alan Payne and Tretch and Tyron Turner. I enjoy, and of course, my TV husband, the best in the world, God bless his soul, Christophe St. John, Shamar Moore. I've had a great privilege to work with amazing men in front of the camera, but also great directors, male and female, of course, in front of the camera and also behind the camera.
Is there a Black director that you weren't able to work with that you wish you had or still wish you had the opportunity to do?
Wow. I'd like to work with John Singleton. He's just, Spike Lee. I'd like to work with Issa Rae, Cheryl Lee Ralph. She's a director. People don't know Cheryl is a serious director, and we wish her luck in the Emmys this weekend to win again for Abbott Elementary as Mrs. Howard. but a friend of 30 years, and I hope we can talk about friendships in Hollywood, because I think you might want to know how that works when you're competing for similar roles, and how you keep a 30-year friendship in entertainment. But yeah.
Well, speaking of friendships, elaborate on it for a little bit. Tell us the competitive side on one hand, and then how you balance it, and the friendship sustains itself.
It's weird. You know, it's different now, of course, with auditions, especially with the advent of COVID. But you'd be all packed into a room, and you're looking across, you know, the room, whether you're sitting right next to your friend. And there's one role, and Shy McBride, he had an audition once, and his friend, somebody in the audition room was chatting it up with him. You gotta be careful, because there are barracudas in there too, wanting to throw you off your game. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. So if somebody's gonna be a chatty Cathy, etc., you just have to you find a space, a safe space, and just keep to yourself and to your audition, because you have to stay focused. Shy McBride would say, as he said to this gentleman who was talking him up in the audition, he said, "Man, there's only one role, and I'm gonna get it." But friendships are non-transactional to me. And my friendship is real, it's loyal, it's long-term. And Cheryl is one of, I can count on one hand, of friends, people I met, male or female, that I met in the industry, whether it's in New York where I started, and in LA. I'm talking about real friends. Then you have to understand that distinction. You know this from being in the NBA, being the mayor of Sacramento, being an entrepreneur, successful in all three, that you have your friends, your childhood friends, and then if you're lucky, you get another handful of friends as adults. But there's also professional friends. You have to realize your professional friends are not necessarily going to be that friend that you can pick up the phone and say, "Hey," right? So you have to make that distinction. And so I've been fortunate to have really good friends, and being able to respect. This is what Cheryl and I talk about, and other friends. We respect each other's privacy. So what does that mean? That means that Cheryl and I don't talk about, in other friends, we don't talk about every single thing that's going on. Don't pick up the phone and talk about every single thing that's going wrong, or everything that might be going right. You really have to let your friendship breathe. And so understanding that, I've been able to be blessed with really good friends. I don't know how many of you in the audience slept with a grandmother, an aunt, had to share a bed with a sibling, but we lived in a very old farmhouse in Maine. And you may wonder, you may be confused about the Maine piece. That was where I was born. I was placed into an orphanage, and I was blessed to be placed with Agatha Armstead when the social workers were struggling to find a Negro, air quotes, family in the state of Maine. Maine was one of 16 states that disallowed Black children to live with white families. So I lived in the orphanage, and I was placed with Agatha, and oh my God, the rest is history. But I got to share her incredible bed. Ma's room was always a haven, and
what page?
My glasses.
And what page you on to? Because you broke rank, you ran down there. So we can read along. Put your glasses on first. Come on, girl.
We're on page 70.
Now you gotta talk into the mic too. Boy.
All right, here we go. Stop, Kevin. Stop,
Hey,
Kevin.
73.
Okay. Ma's room was always a haven where all things fearful or confusing were banished. During a time when I slept with Ma, I jumped into bed first. There were cures and potions, clarity and history. There were trinkets, beads, pill bottles, her jars of Pond's cold cream, skin lotions, face powder, fabulous and expensive wigs on stands and forms, clocks, candles, fabric, yarn, rugs, color, and texture for days, all in that compact New England sleeping space. Now, on the rare occasion that I wasn't feeling well, there was always that jar of Vicks Vapor Rub at the red that Agatha would rub on my chest, then give me a teaspoon of to ingest, saying, "This'll kill that old cold, Vicky." And I thought, me too. But I never asked why, I just swallowed. I could feel the blob of heat going down like a slow ball of fire. Then there was some other confusion. Where did the Rowell name come from? What did foster me? Many times Ma was asked if we were related. She always said yes. Yes, Vicky's my foster daughter. And I cringed each time, feeling exposed. The church lady asking on that day said, "Well, she looks just like you anyway," and awkwardly walked off. I didn't believe the lady who had just come out of Sunday service any more than she believed herself. Couldn't I just be Agatha's daughter? All such thoughts dimmed when Ma entered the room on the night in question, lighting it with her presence as she looked down to see that I'd laid out her rosary beads and her orange polyester pajamas. You know, I've always had a sense of humor because Agatha was hilarious. And I would always put her pajamas laid out on her bed, but I'd place them, I'd put them in a figure. Like sometimes the pajamas had the hands on the hip, crossed legs. Oh, she just laughed. "Thank you, Vicky," she said, beaming pleased at this small courtesy, just as she was every night. Sometimes by the time Agatha had begun to prepare for bed, I had fallen asleep or at least closed my eyes to give her privacy. But this night I wasn't tired, Kevin. I found myself mesmerized by the blue ruffle that ran in a rectangle hung above the bed in a dreamy canopy, which Agatha had attached to the ceiling with evenly spaced red thumbtacks. It wasn't hard to visualize the mahogany bed posters holding up the ruffle, or so I imagined. That was Ma's vision all along. Illusion, magic. "Time to turn over, sugar, and go to sleep," she said, interrupting my blue reverie, making sure my eyes were closed. I promptly turned over, face to the wall, my nose against the moist air held within the 200-year-old plaster. Ma was not only fiercely modest, but in preparing for her disrobing ceremony, she was protecting my young eyes from seeing her disfigurement. That had been explained without words many times, just as we knew that there was an imaginary line down the middle of the bed, leaving an empty space that protected privacy for both of us. This night, however, I needed to see at last for myself how deep her wounds were, how heavy was her burden. Still facing the wall, I watched Agatha's shadow and silhouette fighting against itself on the patterned wallpaper. I had to see more. Ever so slightly, I peered over my shoulder and witnessed the agonizing struggle she undertook to unfasten hooks with her phlebitic fingers, bent behind her crooked spine. I held my breath until her effort and gravity could tear the medieval corset away from her ravaged torso and allow it to fall with a thud to the floor. We both exhaled. I'll just note that Agatha had broken her back when she was about 11 years old. The fire engines were pulled by horses when she was growing up. They pulled water wagons, and she was so afraid of those Clydesdale-type horses. And she didn't reach the top of the steps when she was running. She didn't think that those horses were going to make a corner and thought they were coming right to her house. So she ran up the stairs and fell all the way back down. So you have to figure that would have been around, probably around 1913, somewhere in there. And in those days, you were in a body cast for a year, she told me. So she had scoliosis as a result of that accident, and she had a radical mastectomy. A radical mastectomy required that the armpit, most of the armpit, definitely the breast, parts of the rib, you were completely concave on one side. This was in early 60s, like 63. So she was disfigured in that way. Curious to see what else was to be peeled away, I continued to spy as she removed her wig and pinned it onto a styrofoam form, moving next to lovingly apply cold cream to her face and throat. "Vicky," she whispered as she plucked up a tissue, not turning around to see whether I was awake or asleep. "Always remember the neck and chest are all a part of the face." Agatha knew all and sensed, of course, that I had been watching her. She knew that I had seen her without her wig, two thin braids neatly beneath the artificial hair. I lay frozen. How did she channel away the pain every day? I just didn't understand, past and present. What was her secret? Later I would find out. After winding her waist clock and popping a Rolade, Agatha pinched out the last bits of light and instantaneously left us in complete blackness. In the time that the cricket sang his first notes, crucifixes, statuettes, and rosary beads and clocks were illuminated in a chartreuse glow. The creation of this light, I believed, had to be Agatha's private miracle. I joined her in reciting the rosary, not understanding why she prayed for redemption. Or maybe I knew that she was as close to God as any human could be. I was still trying to figure out who God was and what God meant. But Agatha seemed to sum it all up for me, just lying there with those plastic beads between her fingers. This was my fortress, and she was my belonging. And through Agatha, I had been given the foundation for what guidelines. What were those guidelines that mattered? Merit, study, hard work, investment in property and people, humility, silent meditation, laughter, music, dance.
The first edition of your book at our Source Booksellers in Detroit, and we were delighted that, first of all, to do it, but second of all, for you to bring your story to our audience, to ourselves, and to lift up your experiences as in the foster care child business. And we repeated some of the things that you said that day about becoming a ballerina, going on to, and all of this came from a loving foster mother, a story of which we don't too often say. So we're a nonfiction bookstore, and you fit right into our category. Thank you so much.